Hello, Rasier Trojans. Dr. Ryan Alcantara here, your Career Services Manager, and wanted to remind you that we have our K-12 Career Fair coming up on Friday, February 23rd. It will be held on campus and online. If you've not registered yet, please hit that QR code and sign up. We'll have over 40 schools and districts represented looking to hire our graduates from USC Rasier School of Education. And in interest of getting you ready for the job search season and for the career fair, I have another installment of our workshops. This one will be highlighting interviewing skills. And so just wanted to provide an overview. Same time, remind you that you have staff available to assist if you've got questions or want to do mock interviews. And we also have AI technology that's available to do mock interviews as well. So let's jump into the presentation. So let me start by saying the interview process can vary from district to district. So, you know, in many instances, you can anticipate maybe a few rounds. There may be an initial HR screening where you're meeting with HR either by phone or Zoom. Most often, you know, it culminates in an opportunity to visit the campus and to even do a sample lesson plan. And so to present your lesson. So you need to be prepared for that. I mean, there's the details of kind of Zoom etiquette when you have that, of making sure you're in the right spot, that the lighting's right, your face is centered, you've got stable internet connections, do everything you can to limit distractions and possible, you know, noise interference and those kinds of things. A lot of those rules apply obviously on phone too. But you just want to think that through and make sure as you are invited for that next round, you know, you've got a great resume, you've got a great cover letter, and so you get that interview call, you know, ask through, and it's appropriate when you get that first phone call, you know, what's the timeline, what are the different steps, just so you can anticipate that going into the process. Also note, the time it takes these processes to unfold varies. You know, you may see schools that are in you know, great urgency, and the whole process can take just a couple weeks. In some instances, you know, it may take a couple weeks to go from one step to another. Oftentimes, they'll disclose, you know, what to anticipate, but keep in mind it may take longer than that. So, you know, follow up phone call or reaching out to HR is certainly appropriate, but don't overly pester them, you know. So a call every couple weeks, kind of checking in, can be helpful. And just be mindful that, you know, there's a lot of rules and structures to that process. So they can't always disclose all the details. And, you know, as I said, there's a lot of steps in that process. So they may have a finalist that they're proceeding with, and then those circumstances change, and so they come back. But that's not always the reason for the delay. But at the end of the day, it can provide you with an opportunity for an interview as well. So just again, be prepared for that, and if you've got questions as you go through that process, again, don't hesitate reaching out. All right, so you've got the call, you've talked to HR or you know, the principal, and you've got a sense of what to expect. And so you've got that first interview conversation. You know, what do you do to prepare for it? So obviously the first thing is confirm the logistics of your interview. Is it in person? Is it online? Is it a phone call? Make sure you're ready for that. Certainly if it's in person, making sure you know where it's at, and you know, if you've not been to the area, if you're able to go check it out. Just make sure, like that day of, you're not dealing with where's parking and all of that stuff, and give yourself plenty of time. And again, if it's on Zoom, get the lighting right, have the correct spot, and be ready to go when the interview starts. The other thing is mock interviews, and so making sure you're taking advantage of those opportunities. That you know, you've got to have that elevator pitch, that initial intro. Everybody's going to ask, you know, a similar kind of question of, you know, what sets you apart from the other candidates? Why this school? Why, you know, why this age group? All of those kinds of things. And so you want to have that sharpened. in preparing your cover letter, you've thought about that, but you've got to think about it a little bit more, do a little bit more research on your on the school and the position you're applying for. So it's really important, rehearse that introduction. You don't want it to come off as memorized, but you just want to know what those bullet points are. So have that in mind and be ready to go. The other thing, and I like to encourage students to think about, interviewing as storytelling. Think of those examples. What's an instance of, dealing with difficult students, and what did you do to address that? What worked? What didn't work? You don't always have to say like the stories where the ending was great. If you learn things through the process, it's fair to share that as well. They're looking to hire new teachers, and so they know that you've not necessarily gotten everything worked out, but if you can demonstrate that you're able to kind of shift and tack, and what that process is of growth for you, that can be a compelling case in an interview. But other things, examples of working with parents, or navigating difficult subject matter, things that you weren't comfortable with, all of those things. So what are the stories of you being a collaborator, or developing curriculum, or working with a club or organization on the campus, all of those kinds of things. And so as questions come up, these are examples that you can draw on. So, sketching out, thinking through, what are the learning lessons? In some ways, it's like journaling, and then just be ready to pull on those examples as questions come up. Because oftentimes when you get questions, they want examples to back it up. And so it's not just simply saying, this is how I build a curriculum. I want it to be engaging, and, this is the pedagogy I approach, but, having examples to demonstrate that is an important piece as well. So, work on that list of storytelling, talk to your classmates about it, practice how you communicate those stories. Transferable skills, don't sell yourself short. So, you may only have a year of student teaching as background, but you don't describe it that way. You talk about the engaging classroom setting that you have. So you don't use words, kind of qualifying words like, well, I only have a year of teaching. You don't say that. Talk directly to, this is what I've done. Certainly highlighting transferable skills, things that you've done in other settings. There's a lot of transferability in terms of client relations that you may have, in the service industry or retail. Highlight those. How have you dealt with difficult people in those settings? Obviously, as your career progresses, you'll have much richer examples in the classroom. But now, as you're going through this initial round, feel free to draw on some of that. If you've got volunteer experiences, and those illustrate things that you've learned in the classroom and your experience in the classroom, share those. Review your research of the organization. So before you go in and for that interview, go back through that. Make sure you understand that you've got some good questions to ask the committee, because an interview is a two-way street, and then it's clear that the setting that you're looking at, and you've got thoughtful questions. So I tend to encourage asking questions that demonstrate your research of the institution. So if they said, we have a real strong commitment to DEI issues at the campus, and that's not clear, like what they're doing, it's good to ask, well, in your website, you talk about this. Are there some examples of how that's done, and how is that working? How have teachers embraced it? Engaging at that level to show that not only have you read it, but you've thought about it, and you're interested in these things. The other thing is, bring a portfolio. If you've got great samples of the work that you've done, it's certainly useful to have that available. It may not be something you pull into the interview, but just having that is useful. And then get plenty of sleep the night before. Don't try to cram everything in. Maybe exercise in the morning, do whatever to be in the right headspace to come across as relaxed as possible. You'll likely be nervous, and that's okay. We all are as we go through the interview process. but don't make it worse by being tired and all of that kind of stuff. So again, try to stick in your normal routines going into the interview as much as possible. All right, during the interview, so be confident but not arrogant. You want to smile, if appropriate. So if you're in person, shake hands or maintain eye contact. And so again, if that's on Zoom, position your camera right so that you can do that while also kind of looking at the screen and others on the call. Listen carefully and be honest in your answers and try to be thorough. Make sure it's okay to say, especially you may get a multi-part question. Did I get every aspect of that? It's okay to ask them to repeat the question. It is more than appropriate to have notes and to be writing down the questions as they come through, just so you can hit those points. And then manage your time. So oftentimes interviewers will give you a sense, like we've got 30 minutes and we've got 6 questions to go through. So it gives you a time frame of how am I doing? But at the end of the day, you've got to manage your time with your responses. So be very careful with that intro question. Don't spend, several minutes going through that, because more than likely there'll be other questions later on in the interview that will hit that as well. Other thing, given the opportunity, you certainly want to be prepared to ask questions. So, have those scripted in advance. I talked a little bit about that earlier. If they don't ask it, well, it's just good to have that available, and it's all right to have that written down and ready to go. Tell them why you're a good fit. Make sure you communicate that. You want to reinforce that throughout. So, if you've got an opportunity at a closing comments, just say how excited you are and appreciate the opportunity to be there and learn more, but that has gotten you more interested, certainly if that's the case. But you want to demonstrate why you're a good fit, and that you want to demonstrate that passion and interest in the position as well. Other kinds of best practices and common mistakes, be authentic, talk about things that interest you and where you see compatibility between yourself and the organization. Don't try to fake those kinds of things. You are trying to sell yourself. So again, you don't want to emphasize the negatives. If you get a question of like, what are areas, what's an area that an example of something that has challenged you, or where are areas that you need to grow into, think about how you want to communicate those. You don't want to respond in a way that, what's the common mistake with that one, of saying something really positive that is not really negative. So saying, you're a perfectionist, or you're just too committed to your job kind of thing. That's a backhanded way of saying why you're a great candidate. Now, those things may be true, and if in reflection that's what you want to communicate, you've got to communicate and share that in a better way. But even things that are challenged, like I'm a procrastinator, but these are the things that I've done to overcome them, and I've seen a lot of improvement over the last year of managing my time. It's those kinds of authentic examples that bring meaning, and certainly effectively kind of communicate and allow you to make a connection with your interviewers. Be concise, don't go on and on. Show enthusiasm, so be excited, and you want to do that throughout your interview. And common mistakes, lack of professionalism. You want to be appropriately dressed. You want to show up early. You want to kind of come prepared. All of those things. The lack of content, if you can't draw on your experiences, if you have trouble remembering those, those are the types of things of just being practiced in the skills of interviewing. Negativity. So even if you've had negative experiences, if you had issues with a former supervisor, it's okay to talk about a bad experience, but you don't want to be overly negative, or you don't want to seem that you're projecting blame and those kinds of things. So be careful as you're expressing some of those things. And I'll say within the teaching profession in particular, if you had a bad master teacher, you never know who they're connected with. And so that's just another reason why you want to avoid that negativity. So emphasize what you learned through the experience, and what you want going forward, and how you've grown through these challenges. I mean, ultimately, we've all faced challenges, and so it's just how you can most effectively communicate that. You know, just thinking through, and there's lots of different resources on questions, and if you need, again, to practice and work on those, feel free to reach out. But what types of questions should you expect? I mean, so a lot of stuff on why you're interested in teaching, what your experience is, what sets you apart from other candidates. Talking about your content area. So how do you communicate a real interest in either the age group or the content that you're interviewing for? And so that may vary. You may have a couple of different interest areas, especially as you're going through this round of interviews. And so be focused on that job that you're applying for. So you don't want to talk about all the work that you've done with fifth grade classrooms if you're applying for a job that's third grade. You can talk about those experiences in terms of how they apply to the job you're interviewing for. So be prepared to communicate that. And again, think of the stories that you want to communicate, challenges you faced, what are the things you're most proud about. Developing curriculum, working with teachers, working with students that are struggling, working with diverse groups of students, building community with others in the workplace. All of those kinds of things you can anticipate likely questions. What questions should you ask? So again, as I mentioned earlier, kind of like I mean, it's good. Like, what should I expect in my first year? What are your expectations of new teachers? What are the professional development opportunities? And then questions that demonstrate you've done some research, that you know a little bit about the campus. You don't want to ask questions that are easily found on the website of an organization. So, and bonus, if you're able to connect with alum that are teaching there, or if you've got experience as a student teacher in that setting, you can get some insights. And so again, connecting with people that are there, especially if you're really, really interested in teaching at a particular school or district, look for those connections to get some insights, and that helps you to demonstrate, like, I'm connected to this place, even though I'm not there yet, and to ask some of those questions. How do I do research for the schools that I'm applying for, and the best fit? I mean, the websites are great. There's a lot of oftentimes annual reports or mission statements, understanding those, and again, trying to reach out to other teachers that are there. I mean, you may stop by the school, if you're really, really interested in a particular place. There'll be oftentimes tours with other classes, having had that experience, and just kind of walking in and saying, I'm a new teacher, I'm really interested in talking to the folks that work there. That can be a strategy. What are the qualities, and what are they looking for? And so, obviously a commitment to the students and student success, knowledgeable about the curriculum or the age group that you're working with. So how do you effectively communicate that? And a real connection to ability to connect to the school. So, a real interest in being in that place. So those are important kind of tips. We have some videos with LAUSD as well as Ednovate that are part of this series, and you can kind of hear from their perspectives, what they're looking for and what their processes are. So I encourage you to check that out too. And then, what questions do you have? So again, kind of thinking through those questions. And I mentioned earlier, we have AI tools. So Big Interview is something that's available both to us USC students and alumni. There's the link, and so I encourage you to check that out. And it 24/7 available to you, walks you through a number of steps and gives you an analysis based on their algorithms, but it helps you with things like eye contact and the use of those kind of pause terms and all of that, and gives you some of that feedback. So I encourage you to explore and use that, especially if you're a little nervous. There's also some things just to keep in mind as we wrap up here. So oftentimes you have to do lessons plans as part of it. I know there's a lot of preparation for that in the classrooms. Some of the tips that I heard as I was talking to folks at LAUSD, for instance, making sure to hit a topic that you're comfortable with. Don't reach for the stars and do something you're unfamiliar with as you're going through that process. But practice, do something you're comfortable with, make sure it's to standards, and those were a couple of the recommendations that were shared in those videos. So be sure to check that out. If you have any questions about interviewing or other parts of the job search process, please feel free to reach out to us. At USC, you've got the USC Career Center, and there's resources available there. You also have resources and services through the Rossier Career Services area. So don't hesitate, and we look forward to seeing you at the career fair, which will be held on Friday, February 23rd. And good luck with your job search. Fight on.